pilot was shocked when she found what was in my pants. It all started with a simple flight that was destined to change everything. James, a charismatic black businessman, stepped onto the plane, exuding confidence in his tailored suit. As he made his way to the first-class section, he couldn't shake the feeling that this journey would be anything but ordinary. In the cockpit, Ava, the stunning co-pilot, caught sight of him as he walked down the aisle. Her heart skipped a beat. With striking features and an air of authority, she was the embodiment of allure. A spark ignited between them, an undeniable chemistry that seemed to pulse in the air around them. As she prepared for takeoff, Ava tried to focus on her duties, but the thought of James lingered, pulling at her curiosity. What was it about him that captivated her so? Little did they know, this flight was about to take a turn neither of them expected. So buckle up, because you won't want to miss how this unexpected encounter unfolds. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and watch till the end to see where their journey leads. The hum of the engines filled the cabin as the plane cruised at cruising altitude. Midway through the long flight, a soothing darkness enveloped the cabin, and the majority of passengers had succumbed to sleep. The soft glow of the overhead lights illuminated a few scattered faces, but most were lost in dreams, unaware of the magic happening just a few rows away. Ava had just finished her shift in the cockpit and was taking a well-deserved break. Stepping into the dimly lit cabin, she felt a mix of relief and excitement wash over her. She savoured the quiet moment, away from the technical demands of flying, allowing herself to relax. As she strolled down the aisle, she couldn't help but notice James again. He was seated in first class, his strong, handsome features softened by the ambient light. There was something captivating about him, even in slumber. His confidence, the way he held himself, and the subtle hint of a smile playing at the corners of his lips, made Ava's heart race. She had seen many passengers during her time as a co-pilot, but there was something about James that drew her in like a moth to a flame. Perhaps it was the mystery that surrounded him. Or maybe it was the allure of the unknown. But she found herself unable to look away. As she walked past him, the blanket draped over his legs shifted slightly, revealing a glimpse of his physique beneath. Her breath caught in her throat as her eyes widened in surprise. She hadn't expected to see such an unexpected sight. Ava felt her cheeks warm, a mix of embarrassment and intrigue flooding her senses. She quickly turned her head, pretending to focus on the rest of the cabin, but the image lingered in her mind. What was it about him that made her pulse quicken? She shook her head, trying to regain her composure. It was just a fleeting moment, she told herself, but deep down, she knew it was more than that. There was a connection, an unspoken bond that seemed to form between them with each glance, each accidental brush of shoulders as they moved through the narrow aisles of the plane. Ava took a deep breath, attempting to clear her thoughts. She walked to the back of the cabin, where the flight attendants were quietly chatting. They exchanged smiles and laughed softly, unaware of the magnetic pull that had captivated her attention. As she joined the conversation, her mind kept drifting back to James. The minutes ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. Despite the friendly chatter around her, Ava's heart was racing, and her thoughts were consumed by thoughts of him. The way he had looked at her when they first locked eyes felt charged with something that transcended the ordinary. She was intrigued by the idea of learning more about him, but the flight was nearly halfway over, and she didn't want to disrupt the flow of the journey. As the flight attendants wrapped up their conversation, Ava decided to take a moment to herself. She leaned against the galley counter, lost in thought, her heart racing with the possibilities of what could happen during this flight. Could this be the start of something unexpected? As she stood there, the cabin lights dimmed further, casting an intimate glow that made her heart flutter. Little did she know that this night was far from over, and the real adventure was still waiting to unfold. Ava leaned against the galley counter, her mind swirling with thoughts that refused to settle. The brief glimpse she had caught of James had ignited a spark of curiosity that she couldn't shake. She tried to focus on her responsibilities, but every time she glanced toward the first-class section, her heart raced anew. It was as if her thoughts had taken flight, swirling like the clouds outside, drifting farther from the calm she typically maintained. She poured herself a glass of water, hoping to distract herself. As she sipped, her gaze instinctively wandered back to James. He was still asleep, his features relaxed, the hint of a smile still gracing his lips. There was something almost magnetic about him. His confidence, the way he carried himself. It was hard not to feel drawn to that energy, even from a distance. Yet, Ava felt a flutter of apprehension. Was it right to entertain such thoughts about a passenger? Just as she was about to turn away, James stirred. His eyes fluttered open, and for a moment the world around him seemed to fade away. As he focused on his surroundings, he caught sight of Ava. Their eyes met, and the air shifted, charged with a hint of mutual awareness that sent shivers down her spine. Ava quickly looked away, her cheeks warming as she feigned interest in the cabin. But James was not easily deterred. He propped himself up slightly, intrigued by the beautiful co-pilot who had captivated his attention from the moment he boarded. He flashed a charming smile, one that radiated warmth and invitation. Ava felt a flutter in her stomach, a mixture of excitement and nerves as she returned his gaze. "Hey there," James said, his voice smooth and confident, cutting through the soft hum of the airplane. Ava's heart raced, and she forced herself to respond. "Hello. How's the flight treating you?" "It's been good so far, but I think it just got a whole lot better," he replied, a playful glint in his eyes. Ava couldn't help but smile back, her initial hesitation fading away like mist in the morning sun. Their brief exchange felt electric, filled with unspoken possibilities. But as the moment stretched, she reminded herself of her responsibilities. She couldn't afford to get distracted, not while on duty. "Glad to hear that," she said, trying to sound professional even as her heart raced. "We're about halfway through. If you need anything, just let me know." James nodded, his gaze lingering on her a moment longer before he leaned back into his seat, clearly enjoying the brief connection they had shared. Ava felt a strange thrill coursing through her, a rush of excitement that made her pulse quicken. She had met many passengers in her career, but none had left her feeling quite like this. As she turned to head back to the cockpit, she couldn't shake the feeling that this flight was more than just another job. Something about James was different, and her curiosity about him was only deepening. With each passing minute, she felt a pull to return to him, to learn more about the man who had captured her attention so completely. She tried to focus on her duties, but her thoughts continued to drift back to him, filling her with an anticipation she had never experienced before. As the plane glided smoothly through the night sky, Ava knew that their encounter was far from over. Little did she know, the journey ahead would test her limits and lead them both into uncharted territory. After a few minutes in the cockpit, Ava found herself struggling to focus on the instruments in front of her. The thrill of her earlier encounter with James still lingered in her mind, making it hard to concentrate. The hum of the engines provided a steady backdrop, but her thoughts were anything but calm. She felt an insatiable need to learn more about the captivating man in first class. Finally, she made a decision. Just a quick check-in, she thought to herself, taking a deep breath as she stepped out of the cockpit. The familiar cabin atmosphere welcomed her, and as she walked down the aisle, she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She couldn't ignore the spark that had ignited between them, and her heart raced with each step toward James. As she approached his seat, she noticed that he was now wide awake, a playful smile on his face as he looked up at her. "Well, look who it is!" he exclaimed, his voice rich and inviting. "Back to check on me?" Ava laughed lightly, feeling a warmth spread through her. "I figured I should make sure you're not causing any trouble up here in first class," she replied, crossing her arms playfully. James chuckled, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "I promise I'm on my best behavior, but I can't guarantee I won't be tempted to break a rule or two." The subtle flirtation in his words hung in the air between them, thick with promise. Ava felt her pulse quicken, intrigued by his boldness. "Let's hope you can keep that promise," she teased, leaning slightly closer, her curiosity piqued. "We wouldn't want the flight to get too exciting." "Oh, I have a feeling this flight might be more exciting than either of us anticipated," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. The way he looked at her, with a hint of challenge in his eyes, sent a rush of adrenaline coursing through her. The moment felt charged, as if the very air around them had thickened with tension. Ava had never been one to indulge in flirtation while on duty, yet something about James made her want to throw caution to the wind. "Do you fly often?" she asked, attempting to steer the conversation while also gauging his interest. "More than I'd like to admit," he replied with a smirk, "but I have to say, this flight is starting to feel special." His eyes held hers, and for a moment the noise of the cabin faded away, leaving only the two of them in their own world. Ava felt her heart flutter. Was he flirting with her? The thought sent a thrill through her, igniting a sense of daring she hadn't felt in years. "Special how?" she probed, wanting to draw him out, to see where this playful banter might lead. "Let's just say that the company makes all the difference," he replied, his tone suggestive, leaving the meaning hanging tantalizingly in the air between them. Ava smiled, feeling boldness wash over her. "I can agree with that. Good company can turn any flight into an adventure." They continued their playful exchange, laughter punctuating their words, each question revealing more of their personalities. Ava felt drawn to him, not just for his looks, but for the way he made her feel, alive and daring. The subtle tension built, teasing the boundaries of professionalism, and she could sense he was just as captivated by her as she was by him. As they talked, the rest of the world faded away, leaving just the two of them amidst the clouds. Ava realized she was at a crossroads. The path before her shimmered with the possibilities of what could be. And as the flight continued, she felt the weight of her decisions hanging in the air, ready to unfold with every passing moment. In the dim light of the secluded crew section, the tension between Ava and James reached a boiling point. The soft hum of the engines was replaced by the pounding of their hearts, each beat echoing the electricity in the air. Ava felt an undeniable pull towards him, a magnetism that was impossible to resist any longer. As they stood inches apart, the atmosphere thickened with anticipation. Ava's breath caught in her throat as James leaned in closer, his eyes dark with desire. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice low and filled with an intensity that made her skin tingle. "I've never been more sure," she whispered, her heart racing as she closed the distance between them. In one fluid motion, their lips met, igniting a fire that had been simmering since their first glance. The kiss was soft at first, a gentle exploration that quickly turned passionate as they melted into each other. Ava felt her body respond instinctively, craving more of him. James wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her closer, deepening the kiss as they surrendered to the heat of the moment. Every touch sent shivers down her spine, awakening a hunger she didn't know she possessed. The small crew area felt like a world of its own, shutting out the rest of the flight. Ava could feel the weight of their decision, but in that moment, it didn't matter. The thrill of the unknown fueled her, pushing aside any lingering doubts. As they pulled apart, gasping for air, James looked at her, his expression a mix of surprise and desire. "Wow," he breathed, his gaze intense. "You're even more incredible up close." Ava chuckled softly, feeling a blush creeping up her cheeks. "I could say the same about you." The connection between them was palpable, drawing them together again. Their lips collided once more, this time with a fierceness that spoke of the passion they had both been holding back. James's hands roamed along Ava's back, sending sparks of sensation through her. She melted against him, feeling the strength of his body. As their kisses deepened, Ava realized that this wasn't just a fleeting moment. It was something she had craved. A connection that felt real and raw. With a gentle push, James maneuvered them toward the narrow couch in the corner, guiding Ava to sit as he knelt before her. The intensity of his gaze made her breath hitch. "You're stunning," he murmured, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Ava felt her heart flutter at his words, a warmth spreading through her. "And you're just full of surprises," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. James leaned in, his lips trailing along her neck, igniting a wave of sensations that made her pulse race. The intimacy of the moment enveloped them, leaving no room for hesitation. Ava tilted her head back, surrendering to the pleasure he was giving her, feeling alive in a way she had never experienced before. "Tell me if I go too far," he murmured, his breath warm against her skin. Ava nodded, unable to form words as she lost herself in the sensations coursing through her. Every kiss, every caress drew her deeper into a world where nothing else existed but the two of them. James's hands explored her body with a tenderness that took her by surprise, igniting a fire within her that demanded to be unleashed. "Just like that," she breathed, craving more as he continued to kiss her, each touch making her body hum with pleasure. The lines between professionalism and passion blurred completely, leaving only the thrilling reality of their encounter. In that dim, secluded corner of the plane, Ava and James discovered a connection that transcended the confines of their world. The fear of what lay beyond this moment faded away, leaving only the heat of their bodies and the intoxicating chemistry that pulled them closer together. It was an unforgettable encounter, one that would linger in their minds long after the flight was over. As their passionate encounter began to wane, Ava and James shared a lingering kiss, savoring the heat of the moment. It was a bittersweet realization that this secret would soon come to an end. The quiet hum of the airplane's engines filled the air around them, but all Ava could hear was the pounding of her heart, echoing the thrill of what had just happened. With a final soft brush of his lips against hers, they reluctantly pulled apart. The space between them felt cold after the warmth of their intimacy, but the electric connection lingered in the air, leaving both of them breathless. Ava looked into James's eyes, and for a moment, time stood still. They exchanged a knowing glance, one that held the weight of unspoken promises and shared secrets. "I really have to get back," Ava said, her voice slightly shaky but filled with determination. She stood up, smoothing her uniform and attempting to regain her composure. The thrill of their encounter was still fresh, and her heart raced as she remembered every detail. James leaned back, propping himself against the couch, a satisfied smile playing on his lips. "I'll be here when you get back," he replied, his eyes sparkling with mischief. The confidence in his voice made her pulse quicken again, and Ava felt a flutter of excitement at the thought of their connection. Ava took a moment to catch her breath, her heart still racing as she adjusted her hair in the small mirror. She was aware that she needed to compose herself before stepping back into the cockpit. The responsibilities of her job weighed heavily on her, but the memory of their intimacy ignited a fire within her that was hard to ignore. "Stay out of trouble while I'm gone," she teased, a playful glint in her eye as she opened the door to leave. She couldn't help but feel a sense of lightness in her step as she walked back toward the cockpit, but deep down, she knew that this thrill came with its own risks. Once in the cockpit, Ava settled into her seat, her mind racing. The familiar controls surrounded her, but everything felt different now. She could still feel the warmth of James's touch on her skin, and it took a moment for her to refocus on the task at hand. Her co-pilot, Marcus, glanced at her with a raised eyebrow. "You okay?" he asked, noticing her slightly flushed cheeks. "Yeah, just a little tired," she replied, forcing a smile. "Long flight, you know?" He nodded, seemingly satisfied with her response, and they resumed their duties, checking the instruments and communicating with air traffic control. Ava's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, caught between her professional responsibilities and the thrill of what had just occurred. Every so often, her thoughts drifted back to James. The way he had looked at her, the taste of his lips, the sheer intensity of their connection. She could hardly believe it had all happened in such a short span of time. Yet, in the back of her mind, she felt a flicker of concern. Was this just a fleeting moment, or was there more to come? As they navigated the skies, Ava stole glances at the clock, counting the minutes until she could return to him. Each passing moment felt like an eternity, and the anticipation bubbled within her, a mix of excitement and uncertainty. She knew their encounter was more than just a one-time thing. It was a spark that ignited something within her she hadn't felt in ages. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Ava caught Marcus's eye. "I'm going to check on the cabin," she said, feeling the pull of desire urging her back to James. "Sure, I've got everything under control here," he replied, giving her an encouraging nod. With a determined stride, Ava made her way back toward the crew area, her heart racing with anticipation. As she approached the door, she took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever awaited her on the other side. The thrill of the unknown sent a shiver down her spine, and she couldn't shake the feeling that their story was far from over. Ava felt a rush of exhilaration as she approached the crew section, her heart pounding in anticipation of what might unfold next. But as she stepped inside, a wave of anxiety washed over her. The memory of her encounter with James was still fresh, but the reality of her situation began to set in. She couldn't shake the nagging worry that someone might have seen or sensed something unusual. As she entered the crew area, her eyes quickly scanned for any signs of life. The last thing she wanted was for a flight attendant or another crew member to catch on to the secret that had ignited such a thrilling connection. She knew that in the confined space of the plane, whispers could travel faster than light. Just then, she spotted Jessica, one of the flight attendants, organizing snacks in the galley. Jessica looked up and smiled brightly as Ava walked in. "Hey, Ava, how's the flight going?" "Pretty smooth so far," Ava replied, trying to maintain a casual tone. She hoped her expression didn't give anything away. The last thing she needed was Jessica's inquisitive nature digging deeper. Jessica raised an eyebrow, her smile widening. "You seem a bit flustered. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just a little tired," Ava said, forcing a laugh to lighten the mood. "You know how it is on these long flights." She busied herself by glancing over the galley items, pretending to inspect their preparations while her mind raced. Jessica leaned against the galley counter, a curious glint in her eye. "You sure?" "You know if you need a break, I can cover for you." "I don't mind." Ava felt a bead of sweat forming on her brow. "Thanks, but I'm good," she replied quickly, her voice a bit too high-pitched for her liking. "Just wanted to check on everything before my next shift." Jessica shrugged, still looking unconvinced. "All right, just let me know. I can always tell when something's up with you." Ava laughed lightly, but inside, her heart raced. The idea that her secret could be exposed was a terrifying thought. The thrill of the earlier encounter with James was now mingled with the fear of being discovered. What if someone had seen them together? What if rumors began to swirl? "Are you planning on getting some rest later?" Jessica asked, glancing at the nearby seats. "Yeah, I think I might take a short break after I finish checking on the passengers," Ava replied, keeping her voice steady. "You know how it is? I can't let my guard down for a second." "True, but don't work too hard. We need you at your best." Jessica smiled, her friendly demeanor making Ava feel a bit more at ease. "Thanks, Jess. I appreciate it," Ava said, forcing a smile as she tried to shake off the unease. After a few more moments of small talk, she excused herself, feeling the need to regain her composure away from the watchful eyes of her colleague. Once she was back in the relative privacy of the crew section, Ava took a deep breath. The adrenaline from her earlier encounter with James was still buzzing in her veins, but now it was tempered with worry. She leaned against the wall, trying to calm her racing heart. In her mind, she replayed every detail of their intimacy. It felt like a dream, but now it was tangled with the fear of consequences. What if word got around? What if James was just a fleeting distraction? As she moved further into the crew section, her thoughts drifted back to James. What was he doing now? Was he still thinking about their encounter? She found herself hoping that he felt the same rush of excitement she did. But, with every moment, the fear of exposure loomed larger. Ava knew she had to tread carefully, balancing the thrill of what they shared with the reality of their professional lives. As she prepared to head back to her duties, she couldn't help but feel that this flight was turning into something far more complicated than she had ever anticipated. As the flight began its descent, Ava felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. The cabin was a flurry of activity as the flight attendants prepared the passengers for landing. Ava glanced over her shoulder, hoping to catch one last glimpse of James before he disembarked. The air was thick with the tension of unspoken words, and she could hardly contain her excitement. After what felt like an eternity, the plane finally touched down. The cabin crew quickly transitioned into their landing routines, checking seatbelts and ensuring everyone was ready to disembark. Ava moved through the aisles, her heart racing as she approached James's seat. He was gathering his belongings, a relaxed smile on his face, as if he had just enjoyed a casual flight rather than a whirlwind of emotions. Ava's stomach flipped when their eyes met one last time. She felt an undeniable spark that transcended the professional boundary they had both tried to maintain. He was handsome and charming, and she couldn't help but wonder what might happen if they had more time together. As the passengers filed out of the plane, Ava's breath hitched in her throat. James stood, his tall figure towering over the other travellers. He turned to face her, and she felt a jolt of electricity course through her veins. This was it. This was their moment. Just as he was about to step into the aisle, he paused, reaching into his pocket. Ava's heart raced as she instinctively held her breath. James pulled out a small note and discreetly placed it on the seat beside him, his eyes darting around to ensure no one was watching. "Don't forget this," he said, a playful smile dancing on his lips as he glanced at her once more. The words were casual, but she sensed the weight behind them. Ava could only nod, her throat suddenly dry. After a final glance, he exited the plane, leaving Ava standing frozen in her spot. Her heart pounded as she approached the seat he had just vacated, her palms slightly sweaty with anticipation. She picked up the note, her fingers trembling as she unfolded it. Inside, written in a neat, confident hand, were the words, "Ava, it was a pleasure meeting you. Call me if you want to continue our conversation. James." Alongside the note was his business card, sleek and professional, with his contact information neatly printed. Ava's heart raced at the thought of reaching out. She glanced around the cabin, ensuring no one was paying attention to her, and tucked the card into her pocket. Torn between her professional obligations and the alluring prospect of seeing James again, she felt a whirlwind of emotions battling within her. Part of her wanted to maintain the status quo, to keep her professional life separate from the thrill she had experienced with him. But another part of her, the part that still felt the remnants of their heated encounter, screamed for her to take a chance. As the last passenger exited, Ava made her way to the cockpit, her mind racing. The thrill of their connection echoed in her thoughts, and she felt an ache of longing. Was she really going to let this opportunity slip away? Once inside the cockpit, she shared a few words with the captain before sitting in her seat, the note and card still weighing heavily in her pocket. The crew began their post-flight checklist, but Ava found it hard to concentrate. All she could think about was James, his smile, his charm, the way he had looked at her as if she were the only person in the world. The flight may have concluded, but Ava realized that this was only the beginning of a new chapter. The allure of that brief encounter lingered in the air like a tantalizing promise. As she prepared for her next flight, the note remained a reminder of the risk and excitement that came with stepping outside her comfort zone. Would she take the leap, or would she let the moment fade into memory? Weeks passed since that unforgettable flight, and Ava couldn't shake the thoughts of James from her mind. Every time she boarded a plane, she felt a flutter of hope mixed with longing, wishing to see him again. Just as she was beginning to think that their encounter was merely a fleeting moment, she received a call from an unknown number. "Hello, Ava." The deep voice on the other end sent a rush of familiarity through her. It was James. "James, hi, it's so great to hear from you," she replied, her heart racing. "I was wondering if you'd like to meet up. There's a great jazz club downtown. I'd love to see you again." His voice was warm and inviting, and Ava felt a thrill at the thought of being with him once more. "Absolutely. I'd love that," she responded eagerly, her excitement bubbling over. As they made plans, Ava found herself daydreaming about their first encounter, the way their chemistry had sparked in that confined space. The anticipation of seeing him again made her heart race. The night of their meeting, Ava dressed carefully, choosing a form-fitting black dress that highlighted her curves. As she walked into the jazz club, the smooth sounds of saxophones filled the air, creating a perfect atmosphere for romance. She spotted James seated at the bar, looking incredibly handsome, in a fitted shirt and dark jeans. "Hey, you," he said, his eyes lighting up as she approached. "Hi, you look amazing," she replied, feeling the warmth of his gaze. They spent the evening laughing, sharing stories, and enjoying the live music. As the night progressed, the chemistry between them grew stronger. Ava felt a magnetic pull toward him, and when their hands brushed against each other, she knew she wanted to take the plunge. "Let's get out of here," James suggested, his voice low and enticing. Without hesitation, Ava agreed, and they made their way to his apartment nearby. The moment the door closed behind them, the air was charged with desire. James pulled her close, their lips crashing together in a heated kiss. As they stumbled into his dimly lit apartment, Ava felt a rush of exhilaration. The world outside faded away as they fell into each other's arms, their kisses growing deeper and more passionate. "God, I've missed this," James murmured against her lips, his hands sliding down her back, pulling her closer. "Me too," Ava whispered, feeling every nerve in her body awaken. They moved to the couch, where James sat back, pulling her onto his lap. The warmth of his body against hers ignited a fire within her, and she couldn't resist the urge to explore him further. Ava's fingers tangled in his hair as they continued to kiss, their breaths mingling in the charged atmosphere. As they pulled away for a moment, their eyes locked, and Ava felt a profound connection that transcended their physical attraction. She hadn't just found a lover. She had discovered someone who truly understood her. "What do you want, Ava?" James asked, his voice low and sincere. "I want you. All of you," she replied, her heart pounding with vulnerability. With that, their connection deepened as they moved to the bedroom. The night unfolded in a passionate embrace, filled with laughter, tenderness, and the exploration of each other's bodies. Every kiss ignited a new spark, and the intimacy they shared felt more profound than either had expected. As dawn broke, they lay entwined in each other's arms, a peaceful silence settling over them. Ava couldn't believe how perfect this moment felt. They had crossed a line, and now it was clear that their relationship was blossoming into something more meaningful. Days turned into weeks, and Ava and James found themselves inseparable. Their relationship flourished, each moment together reinforcing their bond. They explored the city, shared meals, and met each other's friends, reveling in the joy of their connection. One evening, as they cooked dinner together in James's kitchen, he turned to her with a serious look in his eyes. "Ava, I know we started off with a bang, but I really care about you. I want to know if you feel the same." Ava smiled, her heart swelling with affection. "I do, James. I've never felt this way about anyone before." "Good," he said, his expression softening. "I want us to be more than just a fling. I want to build a life together." The conversation turned serious as they discussed their hopes and dreams, their laughter mingling with heartfelt confessions. Ava felt a sense of security with James, something she hadn't realized she had been missing. In that moment, they both knew they were ready to embrace this new chapter in their lives. Together, they stepped into a future filled with love, passion, and shared dreams, confident that they had found something truly special in each other. If you enjoyed this thrilling journey of passion and connection, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more captivating stories. Your support helps us bring you more enticing tales that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Stay tuned for our next adventure.